Hey everybody, this is part of our full-length primetime podcast. You can check it out on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, YouTube, plenty more. I hope you enjoy.
This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
And if you're on YouTube, thank you for watching us today. Hey, YouTubes, I feel like we were just doing this not too long ago for the NFL side of things, Brandon.
I think that's exactly what happened because we were.
I mean, your side of the table is a little less crowded since it's only you this time, but if you're listening to us via Blog Talk Radio, thank you for the download. Like I said, if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you for checking us out today. We've got a jam-packed show for you guys. Going to be talking Joe Mixon yet again. We talked about him in the draft special. Now we're going to talk about him in Oklahoma. We're going to look at the WikiLeaks situation going on with Wake Forest and the ACC. And then we're going to look at the NFL draft. Should players be sitting out of bowls a la Leonard Fournette, a la Christian McCaffrey? But Brandon, I want to dive right into this. And this is a topic that we talked about on the Onside Kick draft special this past weekend. We looked at Joe Mixon. We looked for like his draft stock. Where's he going to go? Where's he going to fall? You guys can go to the YouTube channel to check that out. I want to, on the Primetime Podcast, though, I want to focus in on how does this affect the Oklahoma Sooners now that the video is out and we could see it?
Well, I think that now that this video is out, I think that you're probably going to see more people and have more people, if not already, have more people say, what's going on? How is he still able to continue what is leading up to a professional career, but his collegiate career at the University of Oklahoma? A lot of people are saying, you didn't get rid of this guy? You didn't get rid of this guy? And I think that, there are so many different circumstances, so many different instances, so many different situations when different things can happen. And in this situation, he's an athlete. He brings more than just being a student to the table. You know what I mean? And I think that could certainly have something to do with it, why he continued to stay. And most people would say, Brandon, that's exactly it. That's the only thing that kept him there, was that he was a good athlete. That team needed him. That team wanted him to continue to be on that team. So they let him sit out a year, get better, almost a year off-season program to get better, stronger, faster, come back the next year and be better than ever. And he actually did have a pretty good season the year after. And I think that for something like this, it disgusts a lot of people, it upsets a lot of people, and it makes a lot of people think, what are we doing? What really are we doing? Because we preach all these different things. But then when it finally, and these coaches are supposed to preach these different things, but when it finally happens at your school, how are you going to handle it? I mean, take Baylor for an example. More extreme case, possible rape. But look at how that was handled. Swept under the rug. We'll just pretend it didn't happen. Hopefully no one finds out. Someone found out. And then this one, it's people are saying, you need to do something about this. How are you handling this? The way you're supposed to handle this is you're supposed to get rid of those players who are the people that clearly are no good for your program. And I'm talking as the outside people. I'm not talking for myself in this instance, saying that he needs to be gone. He needs to be out of there. Awful, terrible, all this stuff. But do they have a point, Ricky? Do they have a point in the sense of, if this kid was not just if he was just a regular Joe Schmo going to the University of Oklahoma and not Joe Schmo big athlete going to the University of Oklahoma, he would have been out of there. Quiet, but he would have been out of there.
He would have been out of there. And the reason why I'm disgusted in Joe Mixon, but I am more disgusted in the Oklahoma Sooners and mainly Bob Stoops. Like, Bob Stoops, to me, is almost as worse as Joe Mixon for what he did. And the reason why I say that is Bob Stoops was basically the guy who, I know him, the AD, and I think the president were the three that went down, saw the video when it happened, went down to the police station, I believe, watched the video, and then made the call of what are we going to do? And in my case, you guys know, if you watched the draft special already that we had, you know my opinion on it from an NFL standpoint was, if I was the GM, I wouldn't have even touched him. So if you're putting myself in Bob Stoops' shoes, I don't want this fucker on my team. That's basically the hard language I am using. Get this guy off my team. He doesn't respect women. He has no place here. Because it's all about when you hear coaches talk about students, of course you're going to be there for the student. You're going to be there for this athlete to nurture him into becoming a man. But this is something to me where it's like, you know what? Get him off my team. I cannot work with this. Get him off. I cannot work with this. Because it kind of goes back to, I was reading when I was heading to my cousin's for Thanksgiving dinner, I was sitting in the backseat of the car, and I was reading Coach Cal's new book, which if you guys haven't had it, this is not a paid endorsement. I love the book. It's a great book. Go out and get it. And he was saying in recruiting trips, Coach Cal will sit there and kind of observe how the student treats other people. If the student's disrespectful to his mother or disrespectful to his father, Coach Cal will take him off the list. Say, I can't work with a guy like that. If you disrespect your parents, I can't work with that. He'll look for the next guy. So, to me, it's things like that Bob Stoops should have sat there and went, nah, I can't work with this kid. However, it's exactly like you said. Joe Mixon, he's a pretty good athlete. He can help us win football games. So what they did was he got a suspension, which I use air quotes because he didn't get a suspension. He basically was redshirted a year, was able to, like you said, get bigger, get stronger, come back for that 2015 season, and then it's like, you know what? Everything swept under the rug until the video came out here. And to me, I mean, you can point the finger at the AD and the president, but me, I'm putting a lot of blame on Bob Stoops, saying you're at fault for letting this kid be on your football team after that happened, because he wouldn't be on mine.
Ricky, the person I'm most upset with, I think, in this situation is David Boren, the school president at Oklahoma. And the reason why I'm upset with him is this guy is a former senator in Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. He's a Democrat. He's been in politics. And what has he, I'm sure, seen while in politics? Plenty of legislation that has come across his desk talking about domestic violence. Mm-hmm. I'm sure he's worked with it. Most politicians have. I think that for you to be able to see something like that, see domestic violence in your school, in your huge football program that brings in huge dollars, you see that, you look at that, and you're okay with that. And you continue to keep Joe Mixon on scholarship, not just on the team, on scholarship for the final 2 seasons. And I think that I'm most upset with David Boren, especially coming from, and I don't want to label everybody at all by any means, but typically you're a Democratic senator. Mm-hmm. Those are the issues you're supposed to be fighting for, correct? And I think that in this instance, that's just not happening at all. And I think you're the head honcho. Mm-hmm. You're above the athletic director. You tell the AD what to do. The AD tells the head coach what to do. You're the president. You had a real opportunity here. It's not about trying to take someone and make an example of. You already made an example of yourself. Mm-hmm. I no need for me to make an example of you. You had a real opportunity to say, you know what? Oklahoma is better than this. Oklahoma won't stand for this. Oklahoma won't allow this. You're going to be successful. You're going to be successful because somebody else is going to allow that and is going to break their principles and stand for that. But we here at Oklahoma will not do it. And you know what, Ricky, before you say anything, you know what the bad part is? Oklahoma could have won without him.
They could have. And the one thing I was just going to ask to kind of just throw a little bit into that fire is, What does that say? What does that say from yourself and your actions? I'm talking about the president to your female students that you went, you saw that tape, and you did nothing. You didn't do anything. The AD didn't do anything. Bob Stoops didn't do anything. And I know Bob Stoops is a guy who he deals with football players who are mostly male. But if I'm a female on his staff, I'm kind of looking like, okay, I'm getting a different image of you. If I am a female athlete at Oklahoma, I might look at the AD a little bit different. Like, okay, I see what you're all about. And if I'm just a female student on the Oklahoma campus, I'm looking a little bit like, okay, what's this university about? If the president of our university sees a tape like that and does nothing. And
I want to do you one better. He has a daughter.
Exactly.
Again, I'm not saying that she's 5 years old or 20 years old, but I'm saying he has a daughter. You've been in those positions, where hopefully you have not been in those positions, but you've been in the positions of you've got to be a protective father over your daughter. I think that for you, again, to be able to see that video and go, that's bad, but he's really good. We're just going to suspend him for the year. We'll keep him. He'll learn his lesson. We'll say he learned his lesson. He doesn't need to. We'll just do everything out there and go through the motions, and we'll be fine in a year.
And that's the one thing. I mean, this is now drawing back a little bit to when we talked about this on the Onside Kick Draft special. And one of the things I've been thinking about since then, and I've kind of thought about, but I didn't bring it up in that one, was, and I basically want everybody either watching or listening to put themselves in this situation. Imagine the girl that Joe Mixon clocked in the face is your daughter. How would you feel if that was your daughter getting clocked in the face by some goon of a football player? How would you feel? Would you still be like, well, you know what? She pushed him first. Or would you have a little bit of a different reaction if it was your daughter? And I think sometimes that's the kind of goggles we need to put it through. What if it was not even your daughter? What if it was your sister? What if it was your mother? Then how would you feel? You feel a little bit different. And the one thing when I was watching the Outside the Lines today during lunch, I can't remember who was filling. Bob Lee wasn't there, but I can't remember who was filling. I think it was Andy Katz was filling in for Bob Lee. And they were talking to one of the Sports Illustrated reporters, who was at the Orange Bowl interview. So after Joe Mixon has his full season, before he goes and plays Clemson, he goes to Media Day. And they actually let Joe Mixon go to Media Day, which she even said, she's like, I was shocked that they let him go because, of course, the Orange Bowl says, like, you got to take every player. But she was like, I was expecting Oklahoma to say, you know what, stay home, we'll take the fine. We don't want anyone asking you questions they shouldn't be answered. And I mean, I watched the interview. I have the transcript up just so I can read it for you guys. It's stuff like, oh, is this overwhelming? And he starts off with, well, first off, I'd like to say that I'm here to answer all football questions, nothing else for anything, no situation but football. It's not overwhelming. I'm just happy to be here. Then he's asked about, well, did you want to talk to me? And he goes, yeah, a little bit. But, and then he just starts kind of sidetracking. And then they're like, well, what person do you think we should think of you? The person I am. Oh, what's that? A great person. Just these one-word answers until eventually Mike Hawk had to step in and go, again, Joe's already expressed his desire to answers football-related questions to them, where Mixon said, like I said, I'm here to answer all football questions. That was his time in the sun to kind of set the story straight, vocally apologize for it, and put it behind him. And he didn't.
Ricky, he very well may be a great person, but he did not show that, unfortunately, to the world, to the country, when he did what he did 2 years ago. And now it's finally being released. But I think that's the shame is that Joe Mixon has a ways to come back from that. And And I'm not going to go on record and say he's a bad person. I don't know Joe Mixon. I would like to think that he is a good guy who really messed up. And, a lot of people can say, whoa, he just walked out. He hit her, he right hooked her, and he just walked right out. I do have to say one thing, and I think this is something that we had mentioned the other night. What else do you want him to do?
Yeah, what did you expect?
What do you want him to do? One, I'm thinking number one, he's pissed at himself that he did it, and he's like, I got to get out of here.
Otherwise, he's pissed at himself.
I would like to assume he is.
That's what I'm saying.
I would like to assume he is, but I think that he has a long road for people, and I'm not talking us. I'm not talking everyone who's like, oh, we'll forget about it. Oklahoma won't forget about it. People in the situation won't forget about it. He's got a long way to go to prove to those people that he is a good person and that he's a stable person. Because that's one of the things. That doesn't necessarily just go to, are you a good person, you a bad person? Are you stable? Do you usually, if you get mad at someone, Ricky, guy, girl, you usually just clock them if you're just not feeling it? No. That just doesn't happen. One of the things that I had read here from Outkick the Coverage, college football blog, said that the punch was so violent, and everyone, I'm sure at this point, knows something from the incident that's watching us. The punch was so violent that his female victim suffered a fractured jaw, broken cheekbone, broken nose, and a fractured orbital bone near her left eye. Her jaw was wired shut for months, and Joe Mixon supposedly began the incident, according to the criminal investigation, by directing a gay slur at the woman's male companion at the bar. One thing that Ricky, Mark, and myself had talked about on Saturday was the fact that maybe she had directed a slur at him. This is saying the complete opposite, that he directed a slur at the guy that she was standing next to at the location. So, it's back and forth, and I'm only saying this one. I'm throwing this out there because it says in the criminal investigation.
So let me get this straight. I'm just reworking the facts. He says a gay slur to the guy that she was with. After she pushes him, which I don't care who you are, she didn't push him enough to cause any bodily harm. Come on. And then right after you kind of jerk forward to kind of scare her, you do that. That's number two. And then after she clocks here, because my first thought was if anyone gets in my face, of course I'd clock them. Like if I pretend I don't know you, you're a random guy, and you go to do that, I'm clocking you in the face. Get out of my personal space. Number three is what he actually did. And to me, the most interesting thing, and kind of bringing this all back to how is this going to affect Oklahoma, I am interested on two fronts to see, A, how this affects their football recruiting, and B, how it affects their women's basketball, their women's volleyball, their women's track, their women's whatever, their women's soccer, women's whatever. Because two things could happen. For the football side, you might be saying, but Ricky, no girls play football. Well, you're not telling me there could be some student or some parents that go, I don't want you, telling their son, I don't want you going there. You know what? You ain't going there because that's how they treat women. Or on the other side, maybe there's a stud basketball player on the women's side. I ain't going there anymore. That's how they treat women. I'm going to be interested to see how this affects recruiting, because I know that I've talked to numerous people who are like, oh, well, in 6 months we'll have forgot about this and we'll be on to the next one. Not everyone's going to forget about this, especially the people that are inside the Oklahoma bubble, the Oklahoma sphere, or the people who are going into that bubble by either getting recruited by the football program, by the basketball program, by this, by that. It could affect them in the recruiting game. And I'll be honest, if I'm a Big 12 school, I wouldn't think about using it against them. I wouldn't think about it, or I'd think about it. I don't know if I'd actually do it, but I'd think about it.
Another thing that I want to bring up about OU President David Boren. So back on November 15, 2016, He said, quote, "It is extremely important that we let all the members of our university community, especially those who find themselves marginalized, know that we love them, care about them, and embrace them as members of the OU family," end quote. He was talking in regards to incidents of racism on campus. You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. You can't talk out of one side of your mouth and say, hey, those of you who feel the effects of racism, we are there for you.
Mm-hmm.
But those of you who feel the effects of assault, tough luck.
I am going to go back to one thing my mother used to always tell me, Brandon. My mother used to tell me it. My grandmother used to tell me it. Actions speak louder than words. You can tell me that you could say to me, hey, you're accepted, you're this, you're that. Show me. Don't tell me. Show me. And that's two of the last things. Number one, with Joe Mixon, the last thing I wanted to wrap up with him was my biggest criticism about him through this. Not one apology. And I know the comment section right there said, but Ricky, we've heard from his lawyers that he's sorry, this and that. He has never said he's sorry. We've heard statements from his lawyers that he's sorry, but we've never heard it out of his mouth that he's sorry. In how many years? He could have done it at the Orange Bowl. He could have done it after the video was released. We have heard nothing. We have heard words from his lawyers who are talking for him. And then two, what happens to Bob Stoops? Should anything happen to Bob Stoops after this and now us finding out how they really handled this?
Well, again, you took the Bob Stoops. I would ask you the question because I'd
fire him.
We took different avenues.
Yeah.
You took the avenue of the head coach. I took the avenue of the president.
Yeah, I'd fire his ass.
You'd fire Bob Stoops.
Yeah, I would. If it was me, I would look very hard. And I love how earlier you compared it to Baylor, because this to me is different circumstances. Baylor's is way worse, but is it that far worse? They're both similar. We are both disrespecting women. That's what it comes down to in its nutshell of the simplest form. So to me, I look at Baylor and I say, well, their coach is gone. Their president's gone. They cleared house. Why shouldn't we try to fight for the same thing for Oklahoma? And the only reason I say that is because, like I said, actions speak louder than words, and look at what you allowed to happen. You allowed him to, I don't care if you're like, you know what, I want to keep him on the football team because I think I could help him. Fine. Take away his scholarship for a year. Do something. Show me a little bit that you care. Come on, Bob. Show me a little bit. That's all I wanted. I'll ask you about the president then, because you went that route. What do you think should happen to the president?
I think that there should be some very upset. I think that there should be some very upset donors out there that whether athletic or non-athletic donors that would come in and say, we're okay with that. We're okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would put the pressure on the president, because at the end of the day, Bob Stoops, the president, and the AD, they were all in the room together. They all saw it together. I mean, who's to say? Probably didn't happen like this, because I haven't seen any report that has said this. Who's to say Bob Stoops said, no, I think that I'd rather distance ourselves from Mixon. They said, no. He's too good. This is how we're gonna do it.
And
that's probably not true. I'm just saying that's something that definitely could have happened, but I have not seen any report about that.
The thing that I am hearing, and this was from me watching ESPN today, is that Bob Stoops made the call. That he was the one that made the call, whether he was on the football team, suspended. He's the one that made the call. And I'm getting that from ESPN. I'm not just pulling it right out of my butt and presenting it to you guys. But we're going to wrap this up. We've gone a while on Joe Mixon. This is where you guys tell us down below what you guys think of the Joe Mixon. If you didn't get in on the discussion with the onside kick part, what do you think of the Joe Mixon thing? What should happen to Bob Stoops? What should happen to the president of Oklahoma? What does this mean for Oklahoma moving forward? And do you think it affects Oklahoma moving forward? There's that part of it too.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed a lot of emotion. If you want more, click this video right over my left shoulder. You will certainly not regret it.